Hey there, friends. Pastor Jason here. Glad you can join me for daily devotionals. We are in Leviticus. We're coming close to the end. We should finish up next week. We are in Leviticus 21 today as we're working our way chronologically through the Old Testament. Join with me. It's a lot about the Lord's direction to the priests, and I know this might not really hit home for a lot of you because you're not priests and you're not pastors and so forth. But think about how you might be able to encourage your pastors, how you might bolster them, how you might serve the church in a way to help take the load off. As we read Leviticus 21 and 22, here we go. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron's sons, the priests, and tell them, a priest is not to make himself ceremonially unclean for a dead person among his relatives, except for his immediate family, his mother, father, son, daughter, or brother. He may make himself unclean for his young unmarried sister in his immediate family. He is not to make himself unclean for those related to him by marriage and so defile himself. Priests may not make bald spots on their heads, shave the edge of their beards, or make gashes on their bodies. They are to be holy to their God and not profane the name of God, their God, for they present the fire offerings to Yahweh, the food of their God, and they must be holy. They are not to marry a woman defiled by prostitution. They are not to marry one divorced by her husband, for the priest is holy to his God. You are to consider him holy since he presents the food of your God. He will be holy to you because I, Yahweh, who sets you apart, am holy. If a priest's daughter defiles herself by promiscuity, she defiles her father. She must be burned up. The priest who is highest among his brothers, who has had the anointing oil poured on his head and has been ordained to wear the garments, must not dishevel his hair or tear his garments. He must not go near any dead person or make himself unclean, even for his father or mother. He must not leave the sanctuary, or he will desecrate the sanctuary of his God. For the consecration of the anointing oil of his God is on him. I am Yahweh. He is to marry a woman who is a virgin. He is not to marry a widow or a divorced woman or one who defiled by prostitution. He is to marry a virgin from his own people, so that he does not corrupt his bloodline among his people. For I am Yahweh, who sets him apart. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell Aaron, none of your descendants throughout your generations who has a physical defect is to come near to present the food of his God. No man who has any defect is to come near. No man who is blind, lame, who has facially disfigured or deformed. No man who has a broken foot or hand, or one who is a hunchback or a dwarf, or who has an eye defect, a festering rash, scabs, or a crushed testicle. No descendant of Aaron, the priest, who has a defect is to come near to present the fire offerings to the Lord. He has a defect and is not to come near to present the food of his God. He may eat the food of his God from what is especially holy as well as from what is holy, but because he has a defect, he must not go near the curtain or approach the altar. He is not to desecrate my sanctuaries, for I am Yahweh, who sets them apart." Moses said this to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites. Chapter 22. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons to deal respectfully with the holy offerings of the Israelites that they have consecrated to me, so they do not profane my holy name. I am Yahweh. Say to them, if any man from any of your descendants throughout your generations is in a state of uncleanness, yet approaches the holy offerings that the Israelites consecrate to the Lord, that person will be cut off from my presence. I am Yahweh. No man of Aaron's descendants who has a skin disease or a discharge is to eat from the holy offerings until he's clean. Whoever touches anything made unclean by a dead person or by a man who has an emission of semen, or whoever touches any swarming creature that makes him unclean, or any person who makes him unclean, whatever his uncleanness, The man who touches any of these will remain unclean until evening, and it is not to eat from the holy offerings unless he has bathed his body with water. When the sun has set, he will become clean, and then he may eat from the holy offerings, for that is his food. He must not eat an animal that died naturally or was mauled by wild beasts, making himself unclean by it. I am Yahweh. They must keep my instruction, or they will be guilty and die because they profane it. I am Yahweh who sets them apart. No one outside a priest's family is to eat the holy offering. A foreigner staying with a priest or a hired hand is not to eat the holy offering, but if a priest purchases someone with his money, that person may eat it, and those born in his house may eat his food. If the priest's daughter is married to a man outside a priest's family, she is not to eat from the holy contributions. But if a priest's daughter becomes widowed or divorced, has no children, and returns to her father's house as in her youth, she may share her father's food, but no outsider may share it. If anyone eats a holy offering in error, he must add a fifth to its value and give the holy offering to the priest. The priest must not profane the holy offerings the Israelites give to the Lord by letting the people eat their holy offerings and having them bear the penalty of restitution. For I am Yahweh who sets them apart. The Lord spoke to Moses. Speak to Aaron, his sons, and all the Israelites, and tell them, any man of the house of Israel or of the foreign residents in Israel who presents his offering, whether they present freewill gifts or payment of vows to the Lord as burnt offerings, must offer an unblemished male from the cattle, sheep, or goats in order for you to be accepted. You are not to present anything that has a defect, because it will not be accepted on your behalf. When a man presents a fellowship sacrifice to the Lord to fulfill a vow or as a freewill offering from the herd or flock, it has to be unblemished to be acceptable. There must be no defect in it. You are not to present any animal to the Lord that is blind, injured, maimed, or has a running sore, a festering rash, or scabs. You may not put any of them on the altar as a fire offering to the Lord. You may sacrifice as a freewill offering any animal from the herd or flock that has an elongated or stunted limb, but it is not acceptable as a vow offering. You are not to present to the Lord anything that has bruised, crushed, torn, or severed testicles. You must not sacrifice them in your land. Neither you nor a foreigner are to present food to your God from any of these animals. They will not be accepted for you because they are deformed and have a defect. The Lord spoke to Moses, when an ox, sheep, or goat is born, it must remain with its mother for 7 days. From the 8th day on, it will be acceptable as a gift, a fire offering to the Lord. But you are not to slaughter an animal from the herd or flock on the same day as its young. When you sacrifice a thank offering to the Lord, sacrifice it so that you may be accepted. It is to be eaten on the same day. Do not let any of it remain until morning. I am Yahweh. You are to keep my commands and do them. I am Yahweh. You must not profane my holy name. It must be treated as holy among the Israelites. I am Yahweh who set you apart, the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Yahweh. We see the importance of the priests in the Israelite culture. We see how important it was for priests to be consecrated and holy and keep the sacrifices holy, and that the sacrifices were to be holy to begin with and acceptable to begin with, and that the priests needed to be acceptable. It's a very interesting thing to do, to read through Leviticus as I preach through Hebrews on Sundays. If you're interested on like how Christ is better than all this, I would encourage you, read the book of Hebrews and start to see the correlations that are presented here in Leviticus, and that how Christ is better as the author of Hebrews describes it. How can you be a blessing to your pastor this week? How can you be a blessing to the holy people that you know that people that are an example to you of what living a holy and righteous life looks like. How can you be a blessing to them? Think about that for a minute today and act on that this weekend. See if you can't be a blessing to the holy people that you know around you. With that, be blessed, be a blessing, and I'll see you tomorrow in Psalms. Have a great afternoon.